Hello everybody, welcome to the Wonky Angle, where I talk about electronic music, both new and old. And today I'm talking about the new album from Spunkshine, We Will All Be Wrong Someday. Alright, Spunkshine, we are on round 4 talking about this guy. This fairly obscure downtempo artist is one that I think deserves more attention in general. He is, first and foremost, the most consistently great artist I've seen when it comes to titling songs. They're always so bizarre and eye-catching, like he's got albums called Distorting the Hertzian Wave, Brotherhood of Good Explosions, Huge Humans, Ramjet Barbecue. This guy's titles are always amazing. The music itself admittedly isn't quite as interesting as his song and album titles make them out to be, but they're still undoubtedly interesting in their own unique ways. He's still got an easily recognizable style that I can't mistake for anyone else. A mix of ambient and breakbeat that can capture both downbeat moods and lighthearted and fun material. He's also probably the artist who's thrown me for a loop the most while covering him. I've had to reevaluate how I'm supposed to best digest his stuff several times. And I think I've settled on digesting his stuff on a similar level to that of acts like Magic Sound Fabric or Blue Tech. More like moody background music that occasionally throws a silly-sounding left hook here and there every now and then. Anytime I go into a Spunkshine album at this point, I have a pretty good idea on what to expect from like a sonic perspective. He does tend to utilize certain synth settings a lot, focus on fairly simplistic chord progressions. He tends to have a similar balance between electronic, acoustic, serious, unserious, up-tempo, and down-tempo that runs through every album. Although how much I actually enjoy it is anyone's guess. He can cycle through a lot of similar ideas, but an idea executed not so well on one album can be rehashed on the next album and done way better, or vice versa. You never really know with this guy. We've come off the heels of 2 albums from the past few years that show both his biggest strengths and weaknesses, I think. The Most Distant Machine in 2017 was one of my favorite projects from that year, and from him overall. And while it has a couple of moments that drag a little in the middle, it did an excellent job of forming its low-key, moody, but textured atmosphere that kept me coming in repeatedly. But then he followed it up in 2018 with And Then It Was Dark Once More, an album that kinda highlighted the underlying formulas that ran throughout all his previous work, and unfortunately kinda ended up as one of his least engaging projects. When he sent me the advance copy of this new project, he said he tried to make this album weirder, although it ended up one of his more ambient-leaning projects instead. Which, so long as it's good, I don't mind the direction he ends up going in. The song titles certainly had me excited as usual. Surely an album with titles like The Man on the Clapham Omnibus, Yelling Things into Existence, What If I'm the Evil Doppelganger, or The Tat 1 Terminus at Galanac has to be good. But alright, what did we get with We Will All Be Wrong Someday? Well, I liked it a lot more than his last project, so that's good. It is in fact very downbeat and low-key, save for like 2 or 3 tracks to change things up, but there's a lot of solid stuff, more in line with an album like Most Distant Machine than other earlier more lighthearted stuff. And he does this downbeat style very well. There's a lot of focuses on like low-key piano progressions on this one. And the piano tracks were often some of my favorites on other projects of his, so I'm pretty happy with that. All the longer songs make sure to have plenty of change-ups and detours to justify their length too. I don't know if I'd consider this album great, because it still very much follows his usual formulas and really didn't do much to surprise me. In a lot of ways, this album is kind of just Most Distant Machine again, and there are a couple of meh stretches here and there, but they're actually pretty few and far between, and the good here well outweighs the meh. It's the kind of album where deciding a least favorite was actually pretty difficult, because even the lower points here still had something cool that stuck out to me. It's a solid Spunkshine album, and one of his better ones for me, I think. So how about I go into individual tracks? We start with The Man on the Clapham Omnibus. As far as album openers go, this isn't the best I've ever heard from him. It's got a lot of these fun, plucky bass lines and reverb-covered Beach Boys-style choruses and chopped-up vocal snippets. It sounds like Spunkshine. Pretty lighthearted way to begin, but not necessarily indicative of the direction the later moments on the album go. A more indicative look on this album would be the second track, May I Help You? Which has all these chopped up jazzy samples and airy choir pads forming this much more low-key and subtle vibe. That's a really nice one. One of the better moments here for me. Reframing the narrative has these cool orchestral stabs in the beginning, going up against some pad progressions that sound like many other previous tracks he's done in this mold. Though thankfully there's this one pretty great evocative piano section that creates this nice immersive, spacey feel to it. You know, it's not the most unique track he's ever done as a whole, but I still like it. The piano-centric vibe is more focused on, for the next track, Is It Real Enough? Takes a more minimalistic approach applied to a shorter and simpler track. Not as evocative as that one piano section in the middle of the previous track, but whatever. It's fine. A Mistrust of Human Exceptionalism has a lot more going on over the course of its 7.5-minute running time. Various mixes of pianos, ambient pads, violin solos, weird reverb covered sections that sound kinda like field recordings, but it's hard to tell. This track admittedly didn't stick with me, but it is a good sign when one of the lower points for me is as complex and interesting to listen to as this. Navigating in Problem Space was a track that didn't stick out to me on first listen, but really grew on me as I revisited this project. Low-key ambient pads with sparse drumming and weird clanking melodies and lo-fi fluty samples make this track's sound stick out a little more in the crowd without feeling out of place in any way. One of the better ones. What If I'm the Evil Doppelganger is another minimal piano-centric track that likely would have stuck out more if it didn't come after a bunch of similar sounding tracks, but it does have this very sad and lonely vibe that still prevents me from picking it as one of the lower points here. But hey, you can't have a Spunkshine album that never takes a break from all the seriousness, can you? We then get two of my most consistent favorites in the bunch, Recognizing Hypocognition and Yelling Things into Existence. Two tracks that both break the 7-minute barrier and have plenty of change-ups and odd progressions and detours to make up for it. Also both on the more lighthearted and energetic side as well. Well, the former slightly less so, but it does have time for like random detours into church organs plastered over bouncy, plucky beats. And then later, a detour into tremolo-covered acoustic guitar licks, while maintaining a vocal chop that runs throughout, saying, "Perfect, perfect." And boy is Yelling Things into Existence a journey. So much stuff going on and through that one, and it's easily the happiest track in the bunch too. It seems to touch on like every single musical element explored on all the other tracks here while being bouncy and energetic the whole time. Oh yeah, and the 60s TV announcer snippets are a great little touch too. There's one weird moment in that one where like these honking trumpets go up against the church organs in a pretty awkward way, but you know, it's at least keeping my attention. That's probably my favorite track on the album overall. We do kind of trail off a little bit with the next two tracks though. The Tat 1 Terminus at Galanak sounds very similar to his track Synaptic Pruning from his previous album in its first minute or so. Very similar drum break in the beginning and use of ambient pads, though thankfully it doesn't stay like that. It eventually develops into some other spacey ambient sounds and more hard-hitting drums that it saves it from being my least favorite here. Still a cool track, all things considered, but I kinda do have to give this one the side-eye a little. I mean, Synaptic Pruning was already kind of a rehash of his previous track, Shielded Realism, now featuring tingling sureness from Most Distant Machine. And you know, at least he's cribbing from one of my favorite tracks he's ever done, but still, maybe leave that one drum break in the beginning alone for the next project. Anyway, I Need the Sun to Make More Noise. That one starts out pretty compelling with some fun vocal chops and mechanical clanking beats, but eventually trails off into less interesting ambient territory as it goes on. Probably could have cut this one off a little earlier than it went. But thankfully, this album's last three moments are also among its strongest. The Best Possible Condition starts with these bassy rumbles and subtle piano progressions, which, from that description, sound like several tracks already on here, but it does have like a more hopeful and optimistic bend to it that can pump me up despite its low-key nature. Also has those airy, windy, field recording-ish sounds again. I think it's being applied to a more consistently engaging track this time though, that's a really good one. Stereotype Thread is one last track of the longer, more complex, and more lighthearted variety. Got his trademark buzzing bass line, some low-key jazzy detours with light gang vocals in the background. Got shifty ambient pads that ebb and flow in weird ways. Even got some kind of vaguely orchestral moments too. And it does have like a vaguely melancholy vibe running throughout it that actually comes off rather comforting. Another consistent highlight. And then finally, there's our closer, Kerrera, which, yeah, this is an excellent closer. It's entirely beatless, nothing more than ambient pads and whispery Beach Boys-y vocals, and later some flute-like sounds, but it's also rich and immersive and emotionally charged. Ended up being one of my biggest favorites. Easily the best closer among the 4 albums from this guy that I've properly done a video on. So yeah, that's We Will All Be Wrong Someday. I don't think this album quite reaches greatness for me, like I said. There's no track here that really blew me away. There were a few tracks that didn't really stick with me. And the whole thing doesn't really reveal anything new to me about Spunkshine that I didn't already know from his previous back catalog. It didn't throw me for a loop, either in a good way or a bad way. It is also really dang long. Well, all his projects are pretty long. I think his first one was the only one that didn't break an hour, and most of his projects are like around 70 minutes. But I think this is his longest one yet. This one goes on for 81 minutes, and I could feel it. I would not at all mind cutting this project down a little bit, but it is still in the upper tier of projects from him. It's a good project that I still found pretty fulfilling. The much more ambient-centric focus is nice and makes for some really powerful and immersive moments, and the handful of light-hearted moments stand out all the better for it. Not every track is a winner, it's not as consistent as Most Distant Machine, but the best ones here are some of my favorites from him in a while. It's worth a shot. This was pretty solid. I'm overall feeling a 7.7 out of 10. But of course, this is just my opinion. You can feel free to disagree with it, but I'd like to hear your thoughts, so leave the comments in the comment thing down there. Shout out to my Patreon supporters. They're awesome people. You want to add yourself to that list or make me review something, link to my Patreon is in the description. But yeah, that's pretty much it. That's all for today. See you next time.